All right, chapter 6. Okay, so now Henry and Basil are dining together, and he tells Basil about the news that Dorian is engaged. Now, see how it started off as Dorian and Basil, but now Dorian told Henry first about the big news before he even told Basil. And Lord Henry is the one that has to tell Basil about this very, very big news. Basil doesn't believe it, and Henry reminds him that just because he's engaged does not mean that he is married right now. And remember that Lord Henry has a very skewed view of marriage. He doesn't believe in marriage. He doesn't believe that you should have one love. He believes that you should have multiple loves in your lifetime, like him and his wife do. So now Henry assumes that Basil thinks that Sybil is not physically attractive enough for Dorian. And he thinks that Basil is saying, oh, but Dorian needs to be with someone that's equally as attractive as him. But this now gives the idea that Dorian is very much just about appearances. He's not into anything else, which is true because he's just into the art and the beauty. And Lord Henry says that there's nothing wrong with that. You need to be vain. You need to be able to be like, this person is ugly. No, thank you. This person is beautiful. Yes, come to me. So that is what is happening now. But Henry says that this girl's beauty is no doubt. And he knows this because Dorian only goes for beautiful things nowadays, since he discovered his own beauty with the viewing of the portrait and all these ideas that he's gotten from Lord Henry. So then, now Basil asks Henry if he approves of this union, and Henry just says that it's going to be an interesting thing to see, this experience of marriage. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun for him. He's just there for the ride. He just wants to see how it's going to unfold. He doesn't like marriage. He thinks people should be unselfish, and that if you connect with others, you will protect yourself from your own fears. So that's what he says. And he's all just about being alone, being selfish, and not going with the traditional lifestyle. That's what Henry is all about. And he doesn't really care whether Dorian is happy or not. He just wants to see what will happen in Dorian's life, and he just wants to have front row seats to it. Okay, then Dorian comes to them. He's very excited. He's telling Basil about his engagement, and he's saying how Sybil was so beautiful as Rosalind, and even in boy clothes, she was absolutely amazing. And after the show, they went backstage and had their first kiss, and he felt like he was kissing all of Shakespeare's heroines at once. It's not just Sybil, it's everything that she represents and that she can bring. Okay, it's an ideal, it's not reality. He is thinking that he's kissing art, not a real person. So now Henry is now saying, now, what happened? How did you guys now become engaged? And he says it's actually Sybil who first mentioned marriage. And Henry says that's typical woman behavior. It's always them. And Basil scolds Lord Henry, okay, for being rude. Now, Dorian is saying, I'm a changed man. I'm all about romantic, traditional values, and I'm not into your views and your temptations, Lord Henry. I'm changed. I'm going to be with her. And Lord Henry says, pleasure is the only theory to have. It's the only way to go. Hedonism, living life in beautiful sin. Okay, and Dorian says, just wait until you see Sybil act. You will change your mind and you will see that she is amazing. Okay, chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7. So Lord Henry, Basil, and Dorian have gone to watch Sybil Vane act, and they say this theatre is absolutely horrendous, but when they think about it, they say, surely if people come to watch this, and the actress must have some kind of good quality, she must be important here. Then she comes out after the horrible orchestra, and all of them are fascinated by her, and they have to admit, she is beautiful. She does match Dorian's standard. And they are getting ready, and even though she looks beautiful, they're expecting a lot, and her performance is horrible. Her words are flat, there's no emotion, and when there's a very important scene that comes up, she's not giving anything. And it's a shock to Dorian because that's all that he cares about. And he's brought his friends now to brag about this amazing woman and her talents, and she's anything but talented, okay? But Sybil is aware of her lackluster performance, but she doesn't care because she's just happy that her man is there, and she has other priorities which are not acting in the theater anymore. Okay, so then now he goes to her and she says, I know I was horrible, but I found true love, and now I cannot act again. I cannot pretend because I have what is real. She doesn't need the costumes, the sets, everything that she had that seemed real is now shallow to her. And she's happy to say this to him because she believes now she's found true love, and he is livid because he just can't understand why she would give it up. And he says to her that, he only wanted her because of her art, because of what she could become, not because of who she was. And she collapses to her feet. She's begging him to not go. And he's just annoyed. He's just like, I've had it with you. Leave me alone. I don't care about you anymore, you talentless woman. Anyways, so he leaves and he's walking around, kind of like in a trance, not really thinking. And eventually he gets home in like the morning, very early morning. And he looks at his portrait, but something catches his eye. It looks crueler. There's something that just doesn't sit right. And he says, is it because it actually changed? Or is it because I'm just in a foul mood and I think that it's changed because that's how I feel? And he goes to check it out because he's actually very disturbed now, and he sees that his prayer, that wish of his, where he said he could just remain young forever, it has not come true. And the face on the portrait will wear everything that his soul does. So if his soul does horrible things, it will show on the face of the portrait. Now he's thinking, is this very thing that has taught him his own beauty, is it now going to teach him how to despise himself? Anytime he does something bad, he's going to have to look at it and say, oh my gosh, I'm actually a horrible person. Okay, then now he thinks about all the horrible things that could happen, that could not transform this portrait into something horrible. And he starts to have some kind of remorse and regret. And he says, okay, I'm going to win Sybil back because clearly that's what caused this. So now I'm happier now. But the question is, would he have wanted to get her back if he didn't see the change in the portrait? Highly, highly doubt that. Okay, chapter 8. Okay, chapter 8. Now Dorian is woken up. Remember, he went to bed, new resolve to win Sybil back. He wakes up, his valet wakes him up. He's now doing everything that he needs to do, his normal morning routine, opening up invitations, regular routine, having breakfast. He's no rush to get back to Sybil. And he feels like it was a dream, everything that happened the previous night. And he thinks maybe I was mistaken. Because, I mean, it was a nightmarish kind of situation. Imagine just seeing your portrait's expression being changed. But then it hits him that it was real. And he's scared to go and take the visor off, the sheet off of it. And when he does, he sees it's there. It actually happened. It changed. The brushstrokes didn't change, but the attitude in the portrait is what is different. And he's now thinking about all this hedonistic talk from Henry. He's like, are all these things starting to catch up with me now? So he is obviously disgusted by it, but he's also just looking at it and he's seeing, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that this is reversed? And obviously he thinks I need to win Sybil Vane back and regain his moral soul. Not because he loves her or he misses her, but because he needs to fix his soul. And he writes a letter to Sybil Vane, and as he's writing and he feels relief, it's a long letter, then Henry comes to him because he wants to console him. And Henry sees him, he's like, okay, he's in good spirits, so maybe he's not so heartbroken. And Dorian's like, no, he's going to get her back. He's going to get his soul back by marrying Sybil Vane. And then Lord Henry has to say, but she's dead. It's all over the newspapers, but there has to be an inquest, meaning they have to now go and do an examination of her body to see what her cause of death is. And obviously Dorian knows that it was suicide, and it's all his fault. So now, because she is dead, it is impossible for him to go and get her back so that the attitude, the expression on the portrait can change back. Because now that she's dead, it's going to stay like that, which is bad for him. And you think back to the promise that James Vane said. He said, if anyone hurts my sister, if Dorian hurts my sister, I will kill him. Remember that. Okay, then Henry is saying, this is a big scandal and you are involved in this. So do not do anything. Because if you go, you will be publicly known for being in the scandal and that will affect your appearance. Remember, Lord Henry is all about appearances and reputation. So then Henry spins it around to say that Sybil's death was an artistic sacrifice. Remember, she was dying every night on stage. What is different from this? Just think of it like she was one of her characters and she died. And that's a very selfish thing to do because she was a real person and she had real feelings and she had a life. But they are now reducing her to characters. Okay. Dorian is, full of grief, and it seems that instead of grieving Sybil's death, he's more grieving that his behavior was cruel. Okay, and obviously that affected his portrait. So now, Sybil, according to Lord Henry, has lived through all her characters. She has done everything that she needs to do, and it's done now. So you need to move on. It's not a real death. It's just one of her deaths. And they accept it. Dorian says, he looks at his portrait and he says, maybe this is going to be an experiment for my life. Let's see what happens. I'm going to enjoy my beauty. I'm going to enjoy my life. And it's going to be a fun experiment. So let's see what happens. All right, chapter 9. Now, Basil arrives at Dorian's house to express his sympathy for the passing of Sybil. But when he went the first time, he wasn't there. And then they told him that he had went to the opera. And obviously he's shocked because, you're love of your life has just died. And when he asks Dorian, about what's happening, he's so like nonchalant about it, as if her death isn't a big deal. And he's talking about how beautiful the singers were, whereas Sybil's body is laying cold. And what it's showing is that Dorian saw Sybil's death as just death of one of the characters, and he didn't see her as a woman but as a piece of art. And you mourn it, you've done with a piece of art, then you go and look for other art. So that's what he's gone and done. He's gone to look for other art in terms of singing and music and everything, and it's dragging him in this desire for beauty and music and life and all that stuff. So then now at Basil's, he's now describing what's going to happen to Sybil's little white body, and he's bringing Dorian back to reality, and Dorian doesn't like that because to him it's not a real death. Sybil was just a character. And he says, the incident's over, we need to move on, don't think about it, don't speak about it. That's what he's saying to Basil. And Basil's very shocked because he's so different to the young man who sat for Basil and who was innocent and beautiful and wasn't so vain and aware of his own beauty. And I think that's why he so enjoyed Dorian, because he wasn't aware of that. Now he's been dragged into this world of art and under Henry's influence, instead of, wanting to embrace life and go and, be happy and all these things. Now it's like he's shying away from it. Now he's going towards all the bad things. That's what's kind of happening now. And even though Basil is saying, I'm shocked and disgusted, I'm sickened by the fact that Sybil killed herself, Dorian is saying it's beautiful because now she's a piece of art herself. Okay, and all these things that he's saying, it's very Henry-like, very Henry philosophy-like, and Basil can see that. And Dorian says, he's changed. He looks for the artistic views. He still wants Basil's goodness and friendship, but, he has changed, and that's very difficult for Basil to accept. And now Dorian is showing that, yes, he loves the art, but there's no human decency. And that's not the Dorian that Basil used to know. But because Basil still remembers that young boy who sat for him, it's difficult for him to remove himself from Dorian's life. Then Dorian asks Basil if he can make a portrait of Sybil, and he agrees. And then he asks Dorian, don't you want to sit for me again? And he says, no, I will never, ever, ever do that again. And Basil's very confused because it was a great time that they had. And obviously, that Dorian is afraid because of what happened to his portrait now. And Basil tries to go and look at the portrait, and Henry says, if you touch that, I will never speak to you again. Very dramatic for that. But Basil agrees, and as much as he wants to see the portrait, he has a very difficult time distinguishing between the real Dorian, the actual living, breathing Dorian, and the real Dorian, the portrait, okay? And Basil says he actually wants to exhibit the portrait in Paris, but Dorian is very confused because Basil said he'll never exhibit it. But Basil explains that, because he put so much of himself into this portrait, it feels very raw to him to put it out there because everyone's going to see it. But because remember in the beginning, he said that he was very fascinated by Dorian. It's almost like he was just captivated. And once that portrait left his place, he kind of realized, it's okay, I can actually put this out there. And then Dorian says, I'll give, if you give me a secret, I will give you a secret back. And Basil just says, have you noticed anything strange about the portrait? And now Dorian thinks that his secret has been exposed, but it's not that. He's just going on about, the fact that he was fascinated, and, he compares all of his portraits to that one of Dorian's because it is his best one, okay? And it haunts him how he went from seeing Dorian in real life to making the portrait the real Dorian and seeing him as the only real Dorian, okay? And then now the painting is out, the curse has been lifted of this view that Dorian had of the painting, and he wants to exhibit it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But obviously Dorian is still refusing. Then Dorian is left alone. Basil goes home, and before he goes home, Dorian says, don't worry, your confession, it's nothing bad. I see it as a compliment, but I still do not want you to see this portrait. Thank you so much for being a great friend. You're even a better friend than Henry. Okay, but I will never ever sit for another portrait with you. And Dorian is just all over the place. He's still just thinking, Sybil's death is romantic. No one saw my portrait. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Yes, chapter 10. So now Basil has gone, and Dorian is starting to get suspicious of his servant Victor, because Victor knows about this painting. And he's just scared that Victor's going to try and have a look at this painting under this sheet that is over it. So then he asks the housekeeper to bring him a key to the old schoolroom, the top of the house. The key is brought, even though the housekeeper is very confused as to why he wants it, but hands it over. Now, it's funny because this is something that he wanted. This portrait is something that he wanted to hang up in a very open place so people could see it and admire it. But now it's reflecting his soul, and he wants to hide it from others as well as from himself. So then he finds a very morbid Venetian embroidery to wrap around it, and he says this probably was used to wrap around a dead body, but it's fitting because it's like a corpse, this painting. So now it needs to leave the living room so it doesn't show his rotten soul. So then now he's actually starting to regret. He's saying, I actually wish that I told Basil about this because I could have gotten this burden off my shoulders. And he starts to think, but Basil actually showed me a lot of love and support and was a good friend, and I really appreciate that. But now he says that love is too late to save him because he has now changed and it's not for the better. So this just shows how he has now fallen, and his portrait, which was his main focus and his top pride and joy, has now just decreased in priority and value to him because now he's ashamed of it. Okay, so he covers the painting, and as he's covering it, he sees that the painting has changed yet again, and the cruelty in the face has increased, and it's making him panic. So he covers it quickly. The frame makers arrive. They help him take it up to this old schoolroom, and it's his old schoolroom. He sends Victor, his servant, to go send a message to Lord Henry, and then he is now going up with the frame makers. And it's very funny because his public and his private life are very much separated now, right? And he is trying to keep his reputation, what people see, as one way, even though his private life is not that good, okay? Then he is going up. The painting it's a big painting, so now it's a lot of effort that's being put into taking this painting just to go and hide it. No one's going to go and see this. And in this old schoolroom, he's now reminded of how he used to be there. He used to learn there, but he was very isolated there. His grandfather kept him there and kept him far away because of how much he resembled his mother. And it's funny because the deeper they go into the house with this painting is symbolic of the deeper Dorian is hiding himself, because his painting is a reflection of his soul, which is his real self. Okay, so now he is feeling all these emotions because he's remembering all these sad and heartbreaking memories, and now he's hating this portrait even more. He's just not having a good time. Okay, and he makes a decision. He's going to keep it there. He's not going to take it out. He locks it up, and now he sends the frame makers away. Now he's thinking, okay, I'm going to keep it here. No one can get into it. He's almost kind of doing what his grandfather did. He's kind of locking, kind of wanting to control or protect a child, even though that is his true self. He has a lot of ownership over the image, and even though it's his, he's still going to run out of time because he is going to age in some way, but we all know that he doesn't age. His portrait ages. So he thinks, as long as I'm here, I can protect and I can hide this portrait. Okay, so now he knows the painting is gone, and he's really starting to be suspicious of his servant Victor. He's thinking now, but if he comes back, he's going to be suspicious and ask, where is the painting? So whether the painting is there or not there, he's suspicious of his servant Victor, and he's suspicious of anyone who's going to ask about that. Okay, so whether it's there or not, it's still going to bother him. Okay, he starts to think of Victor as a spy, and he also looks in a newspaper, and Lord Henry has marked the article about Sybil Vane's death. So now he's angry because his servant might be a spy, and now he's angry because one of his friends, it's kind of like he's taunting him with the death of Sybil. Okay, we know that Lord Henry's just there for fun, just to see how Dorian's life unfolds. Okay, now Dorian, as seen with his painting, that, it's his own beauty, but this painting is now showing that his own beauty has consequences, right? And it's shown him that he is the main character in his story. Whatever he does will be shown on the painting. So it's almost like he's viewing life. He's viewing his own life before his own eyes. Just like you go and look at art, you see it with your own eyes. It's like he's doing that now. So life is imitating art. Okay. Then he got a package also from Lord Henry, and it's this yellow covered book, and he starts reading it, and he's strangely absorbed. There's no plot, but it's a young Parisian, okay, who's embarking on sin and virtue. Those are conflicting terms, okay? And he just gets caught in it, in the imagery that's created, whatever philosophies are shared in there. And he's late for his meeting with Lord Henry, and he tells him that he was fascinated by the book, but maybe not in the best way. But this pleases Lord Henry. That's probably why he sent it, because he knows that it's going to influence Dorian in some way or another. Okay, and because there's no plot in this book, it's very all over the show, very chaotic. It just shows that even though there's no substance, he's obsessed with the appearance of it, what the surface level is, you know, even though there's nothing deeper, there's nothing that's going to add something to his life. So yeah, that is the end of chapter 10.